if we have a look out of this window, sorry. If we have a look out of this window, you can see quite how Manchester's affected. Here. You'll be able to see this is where we're heading. We haven't got this up yet because they have to have facilities put in place before our work can start. So that's what's happening at the moment. We're waiting for all their facilities to be put together. Then we're going to look like these other buildings. I moved from a freehold house just because it was all getting too much for me. I didn't want to have to worry about new roofs and new walls and all that sort of thing. And I just thought it'd be a lot easier to live in a flat, and I was very wrong.
So my name is Darren Matthews. I live in a development of 32 apartments in Salford in a development called Transport House. I bought into my apartment on a 50% share basis. I own half share and I rent a half share and pay service charge. I've really enjoyed living in the development for the first 14 years.
This is the Life Buildings in Hume, Manchester. I moved in here in November 2007. I was really excited because I got a roof garden. It was a very different looking development. Yeah, I was hopeful to spend a few years here, but I didn't expect to be here almost 15 years later.
I'm an affected leaseholder who lives in the Citygate apartments in Manchester. I'm a founding member of the Manchester Gladiators Campaign Group, which is a voluntary group that essentially campaigns on the subject of fire safety and to essentially ensure that the innocent leaseholders and residents are protected from all the costs. We also co-founded the End Our Cladding Scandal campaign in April 2019, so I've been actively campaigning for about 4 years.
I first became aware of major fire safety defects in this building by letter in December 2019. I was advised that the timber cladding needs to be removed and replaced, as well as timber on balconies. We also have compartmentation issues. The building safety crisis is impacting so many people. Following the tragedies of Lakanal and Grenfell fires, it's made many people, and not only disabled people, question stay put as a strategy in the event of a fire.
So Grenfell did happen in a kind of a seismic way for me because I didn't know anyone. It was heartbreaking, it's tragic. Whole families lost, well, almost whole families lost. Children died from 2. It's absolutely tragic, and the fact that every death was avoidable just makes me furious. But it was seismic in more than that because it's had an impact on my life now, because it's brought about the awareness of the cladding, which brought about the awareness of the building safety scandal.
For the last 4 years or so, it hasn't been as pleasant due to the fact that we've been impacted by the cladding scandal in the same way that a number of other people living throughout the UK have been affected.
Heard about Grenfell and was heartbroken by what happened there, and then learned that shortly after that there'd been retrospective changes made to fire safety legislation, which would have an impact on our homes, the Life Building being one of those homes.
First found out my flat was potentially unsafe at the end of July 2017. Ironically, the email we got actually said, oh, it looks like you don't have dangerous cladding, it looks like everything should be fine. About 3 weeks later, we received a report saying that we had the same ACM category 3, the most deadly stuff that was on Grenfell Tower as well. So since then, it's kind of been a living nightmare.
All the decking has to go, so all of this decking, all of these have to go. You'll see that this whole of this building, all of this side has got wooden cladding on it. So there's cladding everywhere, right up every floor. You'll see that all of these landings, every single one of these walkways, and on both sides has got wooden decking on it. So that, I believe, would all need to be replaced. I believe behind these walls there's insulation that needs to be replaced, but as I say, we've not really got that information yet, and I believe there may be some compartmentalisation issues as well.
I lived on the 13th floor of a social housing block for a few years with Grenfell-style cladding, having no idea it was dangerous. I never thought about how I would get out if a fire. At that time, my mum lived here. She was a disabled pensioner with MS and multiple cancers. Having no idea this building was unsafe. We both lived in fire traps. When she died, she left me her home, as she knew I would struggle to find another social housing flat, as it became inaccessible for me for various reasons. With all the austerity, she wanted me to have home security for life, so regardless of anything else I would have a safe home. It breaks my heart that this is not the case. Trust in associated sectors has plummeted. I do not think I will ever feel safe again, even after remediation. I think it will take decades to repair this trust, if ever.
So when in December 2017 we had our first external wall survey done, and it came back that we'd got cladding. And at this stage it was just cladding. We weren't aware of the building safety aspects, we were only aware of cladding. And I was confident that it would be dealt with. I was hopeful that it would be quite soon. My spirits were buoyed. It was just very upsetting that it had happened to me. But as time went on, and I heard of more and more people who were experiencing this, more and more blocks, and nothing was happening, and I began to feel extremely frustrated with the lack of information. I paid for this is my home, and I have no rights to any information about what's going on.
We were hit with a bill initially for £4,500 to do remedial work on the decking, which is outside of our apartments. Initially that bill was for £4,500. The company that owned the building also emptied our sinking fund to meet the cost of that decking and to employ a waking watchman. 6 months after that, we were hit by another bill of £97,000 per apartment.
My mum had been diagnosed with cancer. I was looking to sell my property so that I could move in and look after her. It just became a whirlwind. I couldn't sell the property. I didn't want to rent an unsafe property out to anybody and put them at risk because my conscience wouldn't allow that. I wanted to be able to move to my mum's and look after her. And in the end I made the decision to leave the property empty to look after Mum, which I did. My partner, who sadly passed away a few weeks ago, lived in Birmingham, so I had considered selling earlier, but was a little bit unsure because I loved the home. It cemented the fact that we couldn't get a home together, so two massive impacts on my life by not being able to sell the property, by the cladding scandal.
In a strange way, we're kind of one of the lucky ones that we have a developer that still exists, because the government is essentially forcing, finally, after many years of telling the public that the developers and building owners will do the right thing, they're now actually making them do that by legislating to make it happen. So they will come here and fix the remaining defects after the project's over. But the issue then is that we've already had 2.5 years of this. We'll probably have another 6 months, another year of kind of living on a building site, living behind scaffolding, living while you've got drilling, cutting going on. We've had further drilling. It's a Saturday today. We have further work going on today as well. So it's kind of never ending, really, where, again, after 6 years after the catastrophe at Grenfell, after 6 years finding out our building's safe, we still don't know when we're finally going to be able to move on with our lives. So like a lot of residents, both across Greater Manchester, across the country, we're all still trapped, really, in unsafe homes. If they're not unsafe or potentially unsafe, then they're unsellable as well. Whether it's leaseholders, whether it's residents, whether it's people of all walks, everyone's kind of just still suffering from the effects of what we call a collective state and industry failure, with the lack of regulations and the failure to regulate what was being built and the bad practice that it essentially allowed all the developers to get away with.
So many continued to campaign for our safety, homes and our future. Otherwise we would all still be in this situation with no leaseholder protections and expected to pay for all remediation costs, even though none of this was any of our fault. For some this sadly came too late, or there is still uncertainty if they will have to pay. Manchester has one of the highest number of dangerous buildings. It's evident just going around the city day to day. Manchester Gladiators and other cladding groups have been vital in lobbying government and as a point of call for advice and information. The Grenfell inquiry has shown the massive scale of systematic failures at all levels, which was replicated across the country, putting profit over people's safety. Additionally, Sarah Rennie and I set up Claddag because there was nobody representing disabled leaseholders. However, we campaign with other individuals and groups on shared issues. The main issues include evacuation planning, impact of remediation works, fixed income, limited health and social care packages, scarcity of accessible accommodation. Many people since this crisis unfolded have become disabled, or their needs have changed, meaning that they are stuck in inaccessible flats and can't sell whilst awaiting remediation works. So many continue to campaign for our safety, homes and our future.
Living here became a frightening experience. I'm on the 4th and 5th floor. Obviously if there's any kind of fire we wouldn't be able to use the lifts, and we have decking on our walkways. So our walkways are considered flammable, so there would be absolutely no escape route out the flat. We've also got decking on our balconies, and my whole entire 5th floor is wood cladded. So basically we would be trapped in an inferno. It had a massive impact on my mental health, not sleeping, living in fear, wondering if somebody who's smoking a cigarette and just flicked it, whether the whole place is going to go up. I put all my possessions, my passport, my important documents, any important things from family members, my jewellery, in a bag. At one point I was actually carrying that bag to work and back with me.
I was devastated. I was living in a building that had no compartmentation, no cavity barriers, other building defect issues, and then somebody had wrapped it in cladding, Kingspan, the same as was on Grenfell. So I know I'm in a building that's got no safety defects and it's wrapped in a combustible material. And I know this for a fact because my neighbours smoke weed, forgive me, but they do. And I can smell it in my front room. And it comes through, I'm quite sure, from the air vent. So I know there's no compartmentation. I know that they drop a cigarette, my flat's going up. Living with a go bag by the door, with your passport, with your money, with keys, that sort of thing. That's a day-to-day normal experience for us.
You go to bed at night, you're thinking about it. You wake up in the morning thinking about it. In the period in between, you're restless, you're not sleeping. So it affects my mental health, it affects my physical health and well-being. It's affected my professional life. I can't focus on my job role. It affects my social life and my family life, because the thing I mainly talk about is the fire scandal, the cladding crisis, the fact that I'm not safe in my own home, the fact that I don't have any control over my life at the moment. Everything that I did have in my life has been snatched away because of this scandal.
The time that I should have spent looking after my mum in her last days were blurred by the cladding scandal and by the anxieties and worries that I got. And that also affected my mum because she was constantly worried for me. However, it was nice to feel that the house was safe, that we weren't going to set on fire, but there was a constant worry of what's happening in my property. Will I even have a home to come back to?
It's affected me to the point where in December of last year, I had a stroke. I went to my doctor for general checkup, for blood tests and for a general checkup, and while I was there, the doctor referred me to Salford Royal Hospital. Immediately I was advised to have inpatient stay, which I did for 6 days. Since then, I've not been able to work. My job role means that I need to have strong executive function, and to be able to work to my ability the best way that I can isn't feasible at the moment.
My property became really run down. I'd always taken great pride in my home. And instead of having a lovely home that I felt proud for people to come in, I felt that I didn't want to invite people round. Because it wasn't safe, and also because it wasn't maintained in the way that I would like it to be maintained. I went from socialising a lot, having friends round, having a roof garden where I'd entertain, to really almost becoming a recluse. That's how much of an effect it had on me coming back here. Sorry.
There's a lot of focus on the financial aspect, there's a lot of focus on the numbers and how much it's going to cost, and people forget that actually, okay, we're leaseholders, but this leaseholder term is quite dehumanising. That's why we always like to say residents, but ultimately we're just all people, just all ordinary people who, you know, a few years ago didn't ever think that we'd be stuck in this mess, that we'd be doing media interviews, we'd be speaking to the press, speaking to politicians to try and get our homes made safe. So again, Darren, Juliet, Georgie, Sarah, they're all people who are been giving up so much of their time and contributing so much. So as gladiators, we kind of feel really proud of them as well, that we've kind of helped them do that.